Imagine what could happen if knowledgeable pro-family voters showed up in November. CitizenLink is working on a massive project to identify, inform, and motivate people like us in key states. You can help. Go to CitizenLink.com and click on the banner. The Supreme Court decided not to take up challenges to marriage. What's the impact on states, churches, and individuals? We'll also talk about prison beards, Abercrombie hijabs, and street signs. This is the CitizenLink Report. I'm Stuart Shepard, along with Bruce Hausknecht, who watches over the courts for Focus on the Family. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Stuart.
First, summarize for us what the Supreme Court did and what states are impacted.
Well, the Supreme Court decided not to take 5 appeals from same-sex marriage rulings from Utah, Oklahoma, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Virginia. And by refusing to take those appeals, they let stand those lower court decisions which had imposed same-sex marriage on those states and overruling the state marriage amendments that were involved there. And now we have not only same-sex marriage beginning in those 5 states, but another 6 will also fall just like dominoes because they are in the same federal circuits as those 5 states.
Add everything up and we could see as many as 30 states that will have marriage redefined, and most all of them by order of the courts, not the will of the people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What we've seen and witnessed over the last several years is the judiciary stepping in as a super legislator and decreeing same-sex marriage in many, many states.
And many of these states have voted to pass constitutional marriage amendments. Those are going to be thrown out.
And that is the saddest part of the story because it overrules the will of the people. We have a democracy based on majority rules. We have a constitution to protect the majority's decisions. And when you set up judges to oversee the laws to make sure they're constitutional, one of the things they're not supposed to do is to overrule the will of the people just to make sure that if something is not in complete alignment with the Constitution, you don't create a whole new system of marriage just to fix it.
Now, the Supreme Court did stop short of making what could have been a Roe v. Wade kind of decision on this. Is that good?
Well, that was a major fear going in here, that Justice Kennedy, as he has done in several of the homosexual cases that have come up over the years, that he was quite willing and eager to impose same-sex marriage in all 50 states, similar to what we saw in the abortion issue with Roe versus Wade in 1973.
All right, and we'd be fighting that for a long time. This keeps it at the appeals court level, which tells us a lot about why the Senate has been so in play this year, because that's where justices are affirmed.
Yes, the President nominates, and the Senate has a constitutional duty to exercise and advise and consent, meaning they have the votes to confirm or not confirm a judicial appointment. So the Senate has a huge role to play in confirmation of judges and therefore what types of judges end up on those benches.
Now I want to take our conversation from the big picture down to kind of the medium, the groups and organizations, and then down to individuals. When we first heard the word about this, we put a little video online that talked about that there would be an impact on churches, that many would be at risk and they need to start thinking about certain activities that they participate in. Some of our Facebook followers had questions about this, some of them who are apparently on the other side of the issue, and said, oh, I'm sure you'll have examples of churches that have been impacted by this kind of law. It's true, though, they have been impacted. Let's talk about it.
Well, one of the earliest cases that we have with regard to churches being negatively impacted through a state public accommodations law was in New Jersey. The Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association from several years ago involved the church property. They had a gazebo where they held outdoor weddings, and it was open to the public to rent for occasions like weddings.
On the beach.
On the beach. And a lesbian couple asked to use it for a same-sex ceremony. At the time, New Jersey didn't have gay marriage. And the church there, the church organization, refused, saying it's against our tenets of faith.
And then the couple left and said, okay, never mind, no problem, we'll find another place, right?
Well, no. They took their complaint to the New Jersey Human Rights Commission, which held a hearing and declared that the church had violated the New Jersey Civil Rights Code. And also the New Jersey State Commission on, I forget, Environment, I think it was, revoked a tax exemption that had been earlier granted to the church for its use of its property. They lost that tax exemption because they refused to give up their religious beliefs in what marriage is.
And that's a church group that's been there for more than 100 years and has had a little camp there right on the ocean shore. And also a case in Hawaii that we've heard about.
Yes. When these same-sex weddings became popular and Hawaii was on the cusp of having those types of weddings, their Human Rights Commission issued an opinion saying, look, if churches rent out their facilities to the general public, they're going to have to rent it to same-sex ceremonies as well. So they're not looking at any religious exemption for churches. They're going to impose their will on any church that rents their facilities. And Hawaii is a vacation destination for weddings.
Now, in the general sense, what's the best advice for churches? What should they be looking at? What should they consider doing based on this?
Well, you need to get with your legal counsel and maybe revise your bylaws and your articles of incorporation to make sure that your definition of marriage is in there. And also...
Why is that, though? Why do you want to put the definition of marriage literally in your bylaws?
Because you're going to have to prove in a court of law someday, perhaps, that your belief in marriage is religiously justified and that you have acted on that and you're not just arbitrarily denying your facilities to some same-sex couple. So you have to create the paper trail through your bylaws and your articles of incorporation.
Now, they also should then be thinking about letting outside groups into the building and what their policies are there?
You're going to have to be very cautious about letting any groups into your building that are not members of your church. We've already seen some churches say no to Alcoholics Anonymous and other of those types of social issue groups.
Which is a shame.
It's a travesty because churches love to minister to the public in their community in any way possible, but they do not want to compromise their religious beliefs, and that's where we've gotten to now with this same-sex marriage issue.
Now, all of this is going to come together. Some of the states that we're talking about have these accommodation laws, but they include a religious exemption, specifically usually for churches. Others do not. How's that going to play out? I mean, this whole thing started because the courts have thrown out law to begin with. Those are also laws?
Yes, and those have to be examined carefully because, as you say, some of those state laws don't cover sexual orientation, so there would be no problem with a church denying a same-sex couple rights into their facility. But what we're also seeing is more and more legislatures, as they turn liberal or from whatever they were previous to that, they're willing to pass these types of laws, and we've seen them growing in popularity. So that means more danger for churches. And
I want you to give just a summary here, but where we've seen marriage redefined or where there's been a movement toward that, we've also seen many individuals, particularly those who own businesses, who've been hit by this kind of change.
Well, that's true. We've seen the church, the Ocean Grove Church in New Jersey. We've seen a wedding photographer in Albuquerque get fined almost $7,000 for refusing to photograph a same-sex ceremony. We've seen bakers in Oregon and Colorado found guilty of discrimination for refusing to bake a wedding cake for a same-sex ceremony. And we've seen people driven out of business as their only alternative to compromising their religious beliefs.
And again, on our Facebook page, we've had people from the other side comment on this, and they say, well, if you're not going to serve everybody, you shouldn't be in business at all. So their solution is, if you're Christian, you can't own a business. That's not exactly the best solution I can think of.
No, it's not. And if you look at the broader picture, we don't impose those same rules on anyone else. If a Jewish delicatessen owner was asked to cater a neo-Nazi rally downtown, and they decided, no, we're not going to do that, I can't think of a court in the world or a Human Rights Commission that would find them guilty of discrimination. We take that for granted as one of our rights as Americans. Why is religious freedom the one we're willing to give up to please this new social reality?
And it's worth pointing out that religious freedom is the first guaranteed freedom in the Bill of Rights. But sexual orientation, same-sex marriage, all that, it's not in the Constitution. Sorry.
Exactly. We're seeing our constitutional rights put in subjection to these new popular statutory rights and the arguments from the left that we're seeing.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up with the speed round with 3 other cases that the Supreme Court did take up. I'm going to throw them to you one at a time. Prison beards.
Right. This has to do with the religious practice of inmates. Are they entitled to grow a beard if they're Muslim? That's a part of their religious duty. They have a law that says that they're entitled to rights. It's similar to the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, but it specifically applies to prisoners. And we like that because we want prisoners to have rights. In this case, though, that law makes an exclusion for any type of religious exercise that might make it more dangerous for the correction facility to operate. If it endangers the guards or if it endangers other prisoners, that's when they can deny you your rights.
All right. So that one will help set the edges of religious freedom is what we're seeing here. And
exactly.
it will go beyond beards in application.
Yes.
The hijab at Abercrombie.
Yes. A young lady, 17 years old, applied for a job there and did her interview while wearing a hijab. And she left the interview. No questions were asked about her headdress. And there was nothing said other than the fact that we'll let you know. She was denied the job. And she found out later it was because the Abercrombie objected to her hijab. Now,
they said it doesn't fit their East Coast prep look.
Yes. Now the question it becomes, under federal labor laws, Title VII to be exact, you cannot discriminate on the basis of religion in hiring, firing, or making any kind of employment decisions like that. But it also says that if you need a religious accommodation as an employee, you have to ask for it. Well, here we have the juncture where all that meets, where the young lady didn't know she had to ask for it, but it was obvious that that was what had affected the decision, was a religious garb that she was wearing. So the court's going to have to figure out where are the edges there in the federal labor laws.
Now, how might this play out for those of us who are in the evangelical sphere? What is it?
Well, it has application to employees wearing crosses on necklaces and things like that. We've seen cases where, I think in Britain this is very popular, this type of persecution where employees are told that they have to take off their crosses or be fired. And we'll end up having that situation in the United States, I'm sure.
And finally, the church sign case. We're not talking the one out in front of the building, we're talking the street corner.
That's right. In the town of Gilbert, Arizona has a sign code, as most cities and towns do across the country, that regulate where you can put signs and things, what size they can be and how they can be lit and those kinds of things. The town of Gilbert, however, has different laws for different people. And if you're a church or if you're a politician running for office, they have a different set of rules for where you can put those temporary signs and what rules control, as opposed to anybody else. Now, if you're going to specialize in your laws against political speech and religious speech, but not against others, that puts you in a direct collision with the First Amendment, and we're going to have to see how that plays out.
Very good. Bruce, thank you for all that insight. I appreciate your knowledge on these things and the fact that you keep up with them for us.
Hey, you're welcome.
All right, and thank you for watching. We do appreciate hearing from you. You may always write to us at mail@citizenlink.com. Do pray for justices and judges all around this country, that they would have wisdom, that they would see the Constitution for what it is and see the law for how it should be seen, and that they would see religious freedom as something that needs to be protected. Pray for that every day if you can. And remember, stand tall and be heard.